At 6:58 a.m., the sound that yanked me out of the morning wasn't my alarm. It was metal Essingmetal, a bright red Porsche door slicing a line across my Camry as the kid behind the wheel grinned like it was a prank. And when I said, "Hey, that's my car," he shrugged and said, "Oops," with the kind of smirk that tells you he's never paid for the damage he caused in his life. Yeah, that happened, and that's the first moment I realized the rules on my street fit some people like armor and fit the rest of us like handcuffs. I'm Nate Carter. Turned forensic accountant, 8 years in Pineview Landing, where the hedges are crisp and the HOA newsletters arrive folded like napkins. At a wedding, I pay extra for parking spot 31 under the light, because my wife Lana sleeps easier when she hears my keys at night. And for 8 years, it worked no drama until that Monday in March, when a silver Porsche with a plate that read Chase 22 slid into my space like it belonged to him and not to the check I'd been writing since the housing crash. I tried the neighbor thing, the polite wave, the can you move nod, but he just marinated in the engine noise. Then, as I squeezed into the slot beside him, he popped the door hard, like he was opening a can. And when I told him, "You scratched my car," he gave me that lazy look. You know, the one, the "what are you gonna do about it" look? "Parking's tight, man," he said, then laughed, and walked toward the mailboxes like I was a speed bump with feelings. I followed, counting to 5, like my therapist taught me. Back when anger ran my life more than I ran it, I pointed at the yellow visitor pass on his mirror and said friendly, as I could manage, "This year's passes are green, and that's my assigned spot." And he said, "My paperwork's handled," which is hilarious. If you've ever heard a 20-something say the word paperwork with a straight face, you know what I mean? And then our HOA president materialized, like she'd been hiding in the azaleas. If you've never met a Brooke Davenport. Let me set the stage late. 40s precise haircut clipboard with tab dividers that probably have their own wills. Voice like customer service, and a stare like a cease and desist letter. She slid in front of the kid like she was his press agent. "Is there a problem, Mr. Carter?" she asked. Smile, not touching her eyes. And when I said, "He's in my spot," scratched my car. "Expired pass," she said. "I'll handle Chase's documentation personally. Do not interfere." Then turned her back on me and strolled off with him. And I stood there, feeling like a third grader who'd tattled on the principal's nephew. Walking back, trying to swallow the kind of anger that tastes like pennies, I clocked how that kid acted around the Porsche too protective body between the door seam and any passerby late-night calls with his back to the lot. Scanning like he owed the wrong people money. And after years chasing fraud, I know the smell guilt has a cologne. Lena asked at dinner if it could have been an accident ever. The teacher hoping for better. And I said, I watched him look at me and do it. And she nodded. Then document everything. So I did photos, timestamps, permit colors, the whole obsessive spreadsheet. And the next morning when I called the HOA office to verify the pass, Mrs. Whitaker answered soft and nervous. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Mrs. Davenport requires all vehicle inquiries to go through her personally now since yesterday," she said. "Which is policy, if policy were invented mid-fall, to make sure you hit the ground." So I went old school. I complimented the Porsche in daylight, with my hands visible. Like a suburban traffic stop. "What year?" I asked, he muttered. 19 eyes flicking to the HOA office like Brooke might appear out of the mulch. I nodded, admired the leather, and as he glanced away, I read the VIN through the windshield. Like every gearhead knows how to do. Then, I texted Cole Bennett, my friend from Wrench Days, who now talks to databases the way I talk to spreadsheets. He called back with a tone I don't love. "Sit down." He said that VIN belongs to Staff Sergeant Luis Alvarez, stolen 8 months ago from the VA parking lot. And suddenly, the scratch on my Camry felt like a starter pistol in a different race. We met Alvarez at Cole's shop. Dress uniform cane posture that tells you the cane is not the headline he told me he bought that car. When he finally walked across his living room without a brace, not a toy, a proof of life. And when it disappeared on appointment day, the police said what they always say about professional networks. They move fast. They change paperwork. They make good people feel crazy. That night over coffee that tasted like resolve. I told Lena I wanted to expose this in daylight, not just as a case number, because you don't disinfect anything by keeping it under a tarp. And she squeezed my hand and said, "Be careful," which is marriage code for don't be stupid, and also don't be a coward. Brooke moved first emergency HOA meeting. Community safety concern paper under every door, like a guilt invitation. The room packed with strollers and retirees, gripping lukewarm coffee. She got up there in a suit that said, "Trust me," and clicked play on a grainy video of a man with a camera near the playground, captions about creepy surveillance. My name said out loud. Like a warning to the crowd, and you could feel the room lean away from me, the way people lean away from stories that stain. My stomach dropped. But before my voice found a plan, Cole raised his hand. Calmly asked her to pause, walked to the screen. Like a teacher approaching a diagram. "Look at the shadows," he said. "Wrong for the timestamp trees that aren't our trees. Compression seams that don't happen in camera." He showed metadata side by side with frames from our actual playground, and the chatter softened to breathing than misses. Whitaker, in that cardigan that makes you underestimate her until she opens her mouth, asked the question that changed the air. If children were truly at risk, why didn't we call the police? And Brooke said something about handling things internally. And I swear, you could hear trust leave the room through the exit sign. That's when fear traded places with resolve. Someone slashed our tires that night at 3 a.m. A brick crashed through our living room window with a photo of my wife wrapped around it. And the word, soon in red. I set my phone to record. At every knock, slept on the couch with a bat like a relic from a simpler America. And just before dawn, the last person I expected to see showed up at my door. Chase knocking small and fast. Eyes jittery, like he was being watched by a dead. "They're coming for you tonight," he blurted. Brooke found the Jeeps, and when I asked what Jeeps, he said, "The one your friend put on my car after he messed with the engine." And that's when I realized Cole had been preserving evidence. The only way you can. When people run, you take the wheels off the running. Chase sat, like his bones were heavy. The swagger fell off him. He told me his parents died a year and a half ago on winter roads. He told me Brooke became his legal guardian, controlled his housing and his money, and his doctor appointments, said he owed her a successful life for taking care of him. And he said he didn't know the Porsche was stolen from a veteran until Cole told him at the storage units. Then he slid a key across my table like it weighed a truth. "Unit 47, he said. "Everything's there." We opened that door and smelled old paper, and heat found forged registrations, guardian files, bank transfers, ping-ponging through Nevada. Arizona, Colorado notes in Brooke's neat hand. A folder labeled wards with 7 names and dollar amounts that made my jaw clench. And when Brooke showed up at my house with 2 quiet men and an envelope, She said, "30,000 for your troubles, and for community peace." I said that's called bribery, and she smiled. The way a wolf probably smiles in children's books call it what helps you sleep. But if you keep poking at things you don't understand, your family might experience accidents like we've all seen. And I told her to get out, and she said, "See you Friday," which is either calendar talk or a threat depending on who's holding the clipboard. Friday night. The hall packed again. Neighbors, a couple local reporters. Brooke with her curated slideshow about closure paperwork, claiming my family was relocating voluntarily, and Chase was entering a therapeutic facility in Nevada, which sounded like a spa and looked like a kidnapping. I stood and said, before we move anyone, we should talk about theft, about a veteran's car, and a kid used like a shield. And then the doors opened, and in walked Staff Sergeant Alvarez, in dress uniform, with two people who changed the temperature badges out. Agent Collins and his partner. And for the first time, Brooke's face didn't crack. It collapsed. Cole plugged into the projector and took the room through the fake video frame by frame, impossible light angles, trees from somewhere else. Composite scars around my silhouette, Patricia read bank lines. With a shaky voice that never broke, a neighbor from the prosecutor's office explained guardian abuse the way you explain tricks to people who desperately want to believe in rules. And Chase's throat-bruised voice steady told the truth into the mic eyes on the veteran, when apology was bigger than a word. Agent Collins stepped forward and read charges that sounded like the worst shopping list in America: racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit vehicle theft, exploitation of vulnerable adults. He turned to Brooke and said, "You are under arrest." The handcuffs didn't thunder. They exhaled. And as she passed me, she smiled like a secret-mouthed. You have no idea how deep this goes, and I felt it the way rot spreads under paint, the way people like her build networks out of polite meetings and fear. We didn't celebrate. We went home and taped the window and put the bat away, and for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not because everything was safe, but because I didn't run. And 3 months later, Pineview looks the same to a drone, but different to anyone who listens. You hear neighbors check on each other. You hear, "Send me the link." I'll read it too. The board has new faces and old rules. With sunlight on them, Alvarez drives his car on Sundays and waves at kids who point. Still talks about shadow angles at barbecues, and we pretend we're annoyed while we pile his plate higher. Patricia prints agendas like gospel, and Chase volunteers at the Veterans Center. Not a hero, not a villain, just a kid who finally chose the truth. You know what I mean, me. I park in 31 again. And even though the paint's fixed, I still see that scratch in my head. And I keep it there on purpose because it reminds me that systems are only as fair as the people who won't be scared by them. Paper can trap or free, and the difference is whether the quiet neighbor with receipts shows up when it's easier to keep your head down. And before you ask, yeah, Brooke's last line still rides shotgun with me. Maybe it was a bluff. Maybe it's a warning. Maybe there are more. Brooks with cleaner smiles and sharper clipboards in more neighborhoods, saying for the community while they protect themselves. So tell me this. Where's the line between order and control? Where you live, have you seen a polished lie? Beat the truth because the paperwork looked official. Who's most wrong here in your book? The kid who let himself be used? The president who built a little empire out of fear, or the neighbors who stayed quiet until the badges flashed? Drop your take in the comments. Share your story. Argue with me if you want. I'm listening.